I want to talk a little bit about the just leave mentality or the just stop. A surprising amount of the people that I've been doing sessions with are people that are divorce curious or on the brink of a separation or have already sort of emotionally divested from the relationship they're in, even though for a myriad of reasons, personal, pragmatic, financial, whatever the case may be, they're not quite ready to leave, to end it, to close it. And I feel like this is a place human to human that we all know. And so as human as this experience is, as redundant as it is, the messaging around it is always the same and it doesn't really fit reality. The messaging is always, we'll just leave, just quit. If you don't like it, end it, etc., etc. And while that may work for some people, in my experience, I've often found myself wondering what to do in situations that I wasn't quite ready to leave, in patterns and behaviors that I wasn't quite ready to interrupt, or in situations or dynamics that I wasn't quite ready to make decisions about in general. Because as much as we'd always like to be the person that leaves at the first sign of disrespect from a job, or immediately as soon as they realize they're emotionally disconnected or divested from the relationship, steps out, we're not. We can't always be perfect, right? We can't always make the right choice in the moment the first time. So I want to introduce you to a concept that's been really helpful in my life that I'm working to guide people through in the sessions that I do, called the clock and the pew pew, because I can't say that word on this platform. So the clock and the pew pew actually comes from a writing technique. And what it essentially is, it's about how to do good storytelling that keeps the reader engaged and centers your character. And so what it means is for anything that's going on in a story, there needs to be a clock, as in the duration of that thing, how long it will last, whether it's a pregnancy, whether it's a time in school, whether it's a period of divorce, whatever the case may be in the story, in the novel. And then there has to be a pew pew, which is something that interrupts it and ends it. And so what this does is a couple different things, right? It takes that period of time and applies a sense of significance to it, right? Because this thing is going on. It has a natural ending that's already established by the person writing. And so then you have to decide what the purpose of that period of time is, why you are keeping the reader held in that window of experience and time. The second thing it does is it lets you know, as the person writing and then as the person reading, that this thing will come to an end. There are natural clock and pew pews, like pregnancy, for example, or the end of a pregnancy, a child is born at some point, or a pregnancy ends, whatever the case may be. There's, the concept of adolescence, right? Growing up has a duration that has an end that is interrupted by adulthood. But the reason that this can be really helpful in our lives is because when I have found myself in that situation of being like, oh my God, I know that this is bad for me, or I know I don't want to be here anymore, but I'm not quite ready to leave, it has left me feeling extremely helpless. It has put me in a position to wonder if I will ever leave, if I will ever end, and it added and contributed deeply to my suffering and got in the way of my ability to center myself in my own story and learn something from that period of time. Progress is not linear, and sometimes we have to learn the same lesson over and over again in new places, with new faces, and in new ways. Other times, we may feel so separated from our own ability to change, our own ability to make decisions and take responsibility for our lives and actions, that we feel paralyzed and helpless and trapped. So how does the clock and the pew pew work in a situation that you're not quite ready to leave or not quite ready to interrupt? Let's walk through it. The first thing is identifying yourself as the hero in the story. So for whatever reason, right, you have decided to engage with a challenging situation on purpose. So beginning with that premise then, what is the purpose? Why? In the worksheets that I have around this and the facilitations that I do, it's really just a why am I here? Why am I here, and what do I believe I could stand individually to gain from the situation? Now, it's important to remember what you stand to gain can't be coerced from other people that's decentering you as the hero. So it can't be, I wish to gain my relationship back or this person's love. But it's good to have an understanding of what you would actually stand to gain, what questions you could have answered, even if they're not the most healthy and productive, right? Maybe you need to see how bad something can get. Maybe you need to have proof of concept that this person is being dishonest in the ways that you think they are. Whatever the case may be, and they don't have to be healthy, right? We're not holding ourselves to a standard of perfection here. We're meeting ourselves and arriving with gentleness, kindness, and additional options to the place that we are. So once we've decided what the purpose is, right? Why are we here? What brought me to this point in my story? What am I doing? The second thing is setting a time frame, a realistic time frame. So if I'm going to immerse myself in a challenging situation, maybe one that I'm not being nourished, I'm not being heard, I'm not being treated respectfully, what is the amount of time that I can sustainably do this before I am starting to risk my own well-being, my own head, heart, and spirit in a meaningful way, right? And before I become potentially dangerous, abusive, unkind to other people. The next thing is defining what we're looking for then. So we've just immersed ourselves as the hero, right? Into a challenging situation that's got a time frame. So what would make this worthwhile? What would we want to see, right? What would we want to experience? What should we be on the lookout for? I imagine we're entering a path leading into a dark wood, right? What would it be important to glean? And then what do we need to resource ourselves with? So ideally letting someone know that we're engaging in something we're not quite ready to quit, but we're doing it intentionally and we're spending time there with a sense of purpose, at the very least to gain even the illusion of closure. And again, I am not advocating that we overstay in situations that are bad for us. I'm talking about how to seize control and autonomy in the moments that we do, right? Because it is a reality that we are not perfect. So once you understand what you're going to be looking out for, what you're going to be gleaning from the experience, and what you need to go into it, we need to talk about when you would close it early, right? What are the degrees to which we will not continue the experiment? What are the degrees to which, or the experiences or the things that could happen that would have us go, nope, early call, we're done. We're not going to be here for the duration we set. This is our line of boundary to not harm ourselves, right? This isn't an exercise of self-punishment or self-harm or self-destruction. This is a harm reductionist approach to difficult situations that come up in our life. So now that we've done the clock, it's time to get into the pew-pew, which is how do we close it and what is the exit plan? So we've defined what completion looks like in terms of the time. Now it's what behaviors and patterns need to come from me to initiate the close, and what patterns and behaviors externally, whether it's the job, the partner, whatever the case may be, will signal the emergency close, as it were, right? What am I looking for to know, okay, we're coming up onto the end here, it's time. This is also a really good time to sit with the risks and rewards, right? What are the risks that I have of continuing to prolong this experience? What do I potentially have to gain from it? Right? If I'm putting myself in a intentionally high stress or challenging environment, experiencing it from a sense of self-possession allows us to weigh those pros and cons a little bit differently. And then finally, to design that exit strategy. What am I going to do to extract myself from this challenge, right? Do I have my email to quit that job drafted? Do I have friends in community that are aware that I'm doing a clock and a pew-pew, prepared to receive me if I have to leave this home? Do I have, job applications prepared for when I may have to transition if my financial situation changes? All of these kinds of things. To have that exit plan prepared, allowing you to enter a situation that maybe is a bit liminal and ambiguous, that you may not necessarily feel is in your best interest, but to enter it with some sense of control and safety and sanity. And then finally, there needs to be a life after the cut, right? After the pew-pew moment, I recommend folks do a real critical 3-month planning process of what do I do now with this extra time, with this extra energy, with this extra mental energy? Because immersing ourselves in environments that are taxing, that are overwhelming, that are painful for us, use a lot of energy, right? Which is why we're usually so exhausted and we can't think straight when we're engaging with them in this sort of ad hoc, willy-nilly way. But when we end up cutting ties with things that are bad for us, we're often left with a feeling of emptiness. And so what do we need to do to kind of repopulate the trappings of our life so that we don't end up back in that situation again? This was a longer video, but I just wanted to show some insight into how I'm thinking not just about my book In Kinship, but about how I'm applying principles of harm reduction and relational psychology and neurobiology into the realities that we face as people relating to each other and as imperfect people who are in a process of becoming. And so if any of this was helpful, thank you for the whole 10 minutes of your time.